Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Josh Dech. Josh is an expert and a podcaster, master in gut health. And today we are going to learn about the many ways, some unexpected, that gut health can impact your life for better and a lot of times for worse. We're going to hear his story on how he discovered the power to heal himself and why he has committed his life to healing others with these problems. So without further ado, let's hand it over to Josh Dech. Josh Dech, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Oh, Kyle, thanks so much for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Josh, one of the things you talked about is near and dear to my heart and maybe nearer and dearer to my intestines. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today.
Well, my name is Josh Dech, and I'm a guy who just wants to see the world be healthy. I spent so much of my life being sick. I spent so much of my life watching my family be sick. I watched my mom go through multiple bowel surgeries, mesh put in. She had colostomy bags done. I've seen it destroy my life. I mean, when my guts were at their worst, man, I was 15 bowel movements a day. I had blood in my stool, 10-minute transit times from eating to toilet, undigested food, ADHD through the roof. My joints hurt. I had acne all over. I couldn't focus. I was so depressed, Kyle, at my bottom end that I planned my own suicide several times because my brain was so horribly inflamed. My chemistry was so screwed up. And that's something that nobody should ever have to do. And I had to figure it out on my own. I got some help, saw some people, but my doctors were no help. And my entire purpose behind what I do is to watch people get healthy, get their lives back, and really stick it to the man because, you've been told your life is over. It's just genetic, and that's not true.
One of the things that immediately sticks out to me about what you said and from my own experience is when we talk about gut health, a lot of people do go to, what eating and the toilet. But ADHD at your worst, couldn't focus, so depressed. And this is something that I've really experienced too. When our gut is misaligned, we experience anxiety. And the reason why we experience the anxiety is almost never what we think the reason is. And going through this of over a decade of health adventures in my own world, I've experienced this same thing, this depression, this ADHD, this lack of focus, this lack of energy. And your brain is so good at making up stories about why this is happening to you. But you have to be a genius Buddhist monk to sit there and think, wow, my gut dysbiosis is really messing with me today. It's the other political party is ruining the world, or these terrible people, or this or that, or my business is falling apart. All of these things. And it's so close to you. It's inside of you. It's so difficult to separate yourself from that. And I think this is one of the most important conversations that we can have, particularly in the United States right now, because I think that probably a third to half of the population has some degree of what you're describing right now. Do you agree with that?
It's worse. The studies actually show 60 to 72% of all Americans are dealing with some kind of gut issue, which you're right will cause anxiety, joint pain, skin problems. It goes all the way back 2,500 years ago. Hippocrates said it first. All disease begins in the gut, which has been proven by modern science today. So if 60 to 72% of all Americans have some kind of gut issue, gas, bloat, pain, constipation, diarrhea, whatever it might be on the spectrum, right, that classifies as low-grade irritable bowel, all those people are going to experience something else in their body. Skin, hair, joints, anxiety, depression. 20% of the population experience anxiety, 20% depression. It's unbelievable. And we're seeing diseases climb at an all-time high. Fibromyalgia is up 7,000% in the last 35 years. It's unbelievable what's happening inside of our bodies, but it all comes back to the gut.
And in my experience, we can have gut health problems and not really experience a lot of bowel symptoms. You can have it without having diarrhea. I had what I would consider to be, I'm a layman in many ways in this, but like normal bowel movements, but still the anxiety. It manifested a lot. The first alarm bell that really forced me to start listening was jaw pain. My jaw started clicking if I opened it too wide.
Mm.
I would get a headache if I ate hard things like almonds. I was afraid to eat sandwiches. I'm afraid to eat sandwiches now because of gluten, but in the past I was afraid to eat sandwiches because I would have to open my mouth so much, and it would either a lot of times like a lot closed so I couldn't get there, and then I would be grinding my teeth at night and wake up with not only a headache but anxiety on the morning. And so these things can be present without the most obvious symptoms or what you would expect gut health symptoms to be.
Absolutely. And when we know all disease begins in the gut, it's not just all diagnoses, it's all symptoms. Right. Now, of course, things can happen for other reasons, but generally speaking, anything can be tied back to. So, absolutely, you're right. Anything you're experiencing, we can trace it back, and you don't have to have a gut issue or you don't have to have a gut symptom to have a gut issue. It can manifest in any way, shape, or form. So, we really have to go back to the roots and dive into what's really going on under the hood.
I'm curious if you can pinpoint, not everybody can, and it doesn't necessarily have to, but it did for me, the moment where a lot of this started. And for me, I was living in Peru at the time. I lived in Cuzco, Peru, which is up in the mountains, and took a trip down to the Amazon for a little bit of a vacation. I was working at a nonprofit, and I was on this 3-day jungle trek. And on the first day, they led us to this incredible Amazonian lake. It was so beautiful. And there were little caiman swimming in the water and all these things. And they had this gorgeous rope swing. And I was 22 years old, and I was the dumbest I'll ever be. And I did a rope swing and a very bad backflip into the water. And just a little bit of water probably went up my nose and down. And I got Giardia, which was the worst pathogen.
Wrote that down
Yes.
long ago. Parasites. I'm like, I knew it. Sorry,
Oh
keep
yeah.
going.
The worst pathogen thing that I've ever experienced in my life. 5 days later, couldn't keep food down. I couldn't keep water down, couldn't do anything. And I went to a clinic. They injected me with probably some nuclear grade antibiotic. And then it would be 5 or 6 years of these symptoms, jaw pain, joint pain, anxiety slowly creeping up. And I had no idea what was wrong with me. I thought it was just my mindset. It was my problem. But yeah, it would take this many years and these things progressing in me to really wake me up to this. And only in like 2023 did I do a really heavy parasite cleanse and start to get some major progress in this world. But I've tried a lot of bacteria, gut health, viral, all kinds of things. And there wasn't just, while I say that there was this one moment for me, there were many different factors that led up to this. Do you have a similar moment where you started on this health journey for the worse before it got better?
Absolutely. And this is the key point to anybody who's looking into their own is where did it start? What's the origin? The first time I remember having a gut issue. The earliest time I can remember, I was in my early teens, 13, 14. And I was a competitive wrestler. I was a very good wrestler throughout high school. I was going to compete a little bit in college. Um, I was dealing with what we call the nervous belly. Right? You go in for a tournament or something comes up and you get a little anxious, like, oh, maybe I should use the toilet, right? Happens. Then I started with a little bit of joint pain. And then every time I have a bowel movement, 1 and 3 were going to be a bit loose. At the time, I was in bodybuilding, so I was working out, weight training. I'm 14, right, just getting into it, but I'm working out 5 days a week. I'm wrestling 5 days a week. I'm in gymnastics 2 to 3 days a week. I'm doing mixed martial arts on the weekends and a couple of days during the week. So I'm working out probably 14 times a bloody week. So I thought, I got to get my protein in. So I'm downing the cheapest stuff I can find: whole milk, cottage cheese, 18 eggs a day, all kinds of stuff. Just, I mean, maybe now eggs aren't so cheap with with inflation, but then they
Yeah.
were. So I was just pounding back all the proteins I could find. And what started to happen is my gut developed to the point where I got diagnosed formally with IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome. Now, I will say a diagnosis is complete BS. It's just a word that defines your symptoms so your doctor knows how to classify you on paper. So any other health professional can hear that word, IBS, Crohn's, colitis, arthritis, whatever it is, and know within 99% exactly what's going on. But it tells us what's going on and where, but never why. And they never addressed why. So they said, well, you just have it. So it got worse and worse. I kept eating those foods. Here I am in gymnastics now. I'm like, I need more calories. Run over to Subway, run over to McDonald's. I'm counting my calories, not my chemicals. My gut got worse and worse. And I was at an all-time low, all time, in my early 20s. And this is where I was having 10, 15 bowel movements a day, 10-minute transit times, blood in my stool, severe anxiety, depression. It hit a precipice. I watched my mom go through stuff at the same time. 2 bowel resections. I took out 2 feet of her bowel over 2 separate surgeries. They removed her gallbladder, put mesh in, colostomies. My dad had gut issues. So I've been around it. And I was like, oh, it's just genetic. And I hit my rock bottom in my mid-20s when all of this finally inflamed my whole body, my brain, my joints, everything. Just, I was done. And I honestly, it's nothing but a miracle that I'm alive today because of the choices I made, and the ability that I was given, and the people in my life to help me through that stage.
Hmm. That's really powerful. And I'm sure one of the things that you said is like, well, this must be genetic. And I think there's a lot of stories that people have about these things. And from my perspective, at that similar age, I simply wasn't aware of an alternative. And I would go to my normal doctors and they would tell me, and then that would just be my reality. What are some of the other stories, the limiting beliefs, the misconceptions that people have that keep them stuck in this kind of pattern?
Hmm. It's the ideology of it being genetic or hereditary. It's in my family, or maybe I'm just a lemon. I've tried all the things, I've tried all the cleanses, I've tried all the supplements, I've seen the specialists. I'm still not better. And the reality is, the second you start believing that your DNA, your biology is faulty, you're going to start looking for answers. One of the big reasons that I've been so successful, like, I help people reverse Crohn's and colitis and severe IBS. Now, Crohn's and colitis are classified as IBD, or inflammatory bowel diseases. Extremely inflammatory, considered autoimmune, and idiopathic, meaning no known cause, or genetic in nature. So we don't know why it's happening. God plays favorites, whatever it is, there's nothing you can do. They give immunosuppressive drugs and call it a day. Because these people, they're told by their physicians, there's nothing you can do. Well, they must have all the answers. There's nothing I can do. I tried it naturally myself. It didn't work, so this must be how I am. Without really realizing that there's many, many layers that contribute to this problem. They go, I got a little better, then got a little worse. Yep, another layer showed its ugly head. And so we're stuck in these positions because we accept that our DNA is faulty. We accept our biology is faulty because we don't understand why it's happening. It must be innate to my DNA that I'm broken, or my body, I'm sick, whatever it is. But we don't have the wherewithal, the skill set, or the understanding to go deeper and see what are the things that are filling your cup. Now that your cup has overflowed, what else has gotten wet? What other things in your system are compromised? Your liver and your drainage, your exit pathways in the body, your immune system, your gut lining, your gut microbiome. What else has been compromised now that this thing has overflowed? And another question is, why can't you empty it like everybody else? Once you start understanding there are different cups in your body, you understand why you keep getting sick, because you keep spilling the water, so to speak, to beat the analogy to death. And it's not that you're going down this natural way. Well, I tried natural. Okay, well, you're inflamed, you took curcumin. Your bowels were too slow, so you took some magnesium to speed them up. That's plant-based medication. You're managing symptoms, and we never address root causes. And that's why so many people get stuck where they're at. They don't understand the cups. No one's told you that there's a root cause, and nobody's addressed the layers contributing to your illness.
So you've started to outline a little bit about what's unique about your process, and I'm curious if there are other things that you would want to highlight. We know, going to the root instead of just managing the symptoms. What do you believe that gets people to where they actually want to go. Not necessarily where they want to go, but how you get them there. That's different and unique in your philosophy and methodology.
The first thing is understanding where it came from. If you want to fix something, you have to understand it. And again, you go to your doctor and they give you something to manage your symptoms. It's no different. If you went to the mechanic with a knock in your car and they're like, oh, yeah, here's some earplugs, it doesn't fix the car. It just changes whether or not you recognize what's going on. So you go to your doctor for anti-inflammatories or immunosuppressive drugs or whatever they give you. It doesn't address the reason why your body is not functioning optimally. And that's the root of it. Great example. I'm working with a woman right now. Oddly enough, it seems to come in droves where it's like batches of the same issue. But we have a couple of ladies who came in and there's childhood abuse, childhood trauma. That was the first instance, which led to stress and anxiety, which led to a nervous belly, which led to hormone disruption, which caused weight gain. So to balance that, they went on and started binging, purging, anorexia, bulimia to try to keep those down, over-exercising, which stressed the nervous system, it stressed the gut lining, the gut microbiome, and caused overgrowth in their system, which eventually continued to overgrow, drop their immune system, let bad guys in, which led to bowel disease like Crohn's or colitis. So there was a root back there. So we have to identify where that root is. You want to understand where it came from. You have to know what filled your cup in what order. We can use that and then sort of reframe or reorganize these layers and say, here's the way in which we're coming down to reverse this process. So I go through a very sort of simple 5R process. Now, everyone's going to have a different 5R, their own iteration. So mine are very much, we'll say, tailored to bowel diseases or bowel issues, but it can apply to any condition. The first thing is remove the problem. Where did it come from? Is there mold in my environment? Did I get a Giardia infection, which led to these inflammations? Am I chronically stressed? Well, say, well, I dealt with that trauma, but I'm an anxious person. Then you dealt with that trauma, but you didn't re-regulate your nervous system. So we have to remove that problem, what's currently filling your cup. The second thing you have to do is replenish. Our bodies, there's 3 reasons we get sick, Kyle. 3 at all. It's some kind of toxin, mold, heavy metals, environmental, chronic stress, chronically high blood sugar, pesticides, alcohol, food emulsifiers, food dyes. All these things are toxic. That's the reason number 1. The second reason we get sick is due to some kind of deficiency. Vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proper gut-brain axis or neurological regulation, fresh air, sunlight, exercise. These are things that we need to give our body the nutrients. So if we're deficient in any of these, we start to fall apart. Our body needs these to repair. The third thing is microbes, viruses, fungus, bacteria, parasites. So we have to remove the problem, the infection, the toxin, the something, replenish what we're deficient in, and then we can go to rebuilding your gut lining, your microbiome, whatever it is, repair the tissue that they live in, because you wouldn't live in a house that's full of holes with holes in the roof that's been burned down. Your microbes, that environment, that ecosystem we call your gut microbiome, can't live in that environment either. So you have to repair that environment. But now that your immune system's all out of whack, you have to rejuvenate it, not boost it, but rebalance, rejuvenate.
Is that different than rebuild and repair?
It is. So rebuild specifically will come to the microbiome, the microbes and the organisms living inside of your body. Repairing is repairing the home that they live in, the tissues, your gut lining. And then rejuvenating is your body's responses to all of it. Your immune system, the anxiety, the depression, the hives and rashes and runny, stuffy nose, all these things you experience on an immunological level has to now be rebalanced. And there's a lot of 5Rs out there. Dr. Pompa will use remove, regenerate, restore, reduce, reestablish, where we use remove, replenish, rebuild, repair, rejuvenate. We see how they're kind of the same thing, but a little bit different to their application.
Yeah. After implementing a lot of these things, when was a moment, it was probably in your late 20s, maybe, hopefully in the mid 20s, but hopefully soon, that you experienced hope again for the first time? When did you feel like, wow, I maybe am not stuck like this forever, and I could, I have more control over this than I ever thought possible?
It was when I started to get my energy back. That was the first thing I experienced. When you're having 15 bowel movements a day, 10-minute transit times, there's no time for your food to digest and absorb. You're imbalanced. You're depleted on your nutrients. Once I was able to slow things down, start absorbing again, my energy came back. Now, I made some poor choices at the time. I was competing in strength sports. So, Kyle, I'm only 5'9". You met me. You're a pretty tall dude, right? You're like a head and a half tall. You had to look down to talk to me, right? So I'm only 5'9". At the time, I was 216 pounds, but
Mm.
all muscle. I was on steroids. I was competing in strength sports, but under the surface, I had all these issues going on, and the steroids just pushed it over the edge and congested my liver, and everything popped off. So I went from 216 pounds to about 170, maybe 165.
Wow.
So all in all, I lost 45 pounds probably. I'm really bad at math, but you guys can do that for me. For my natural weight, I lost about 30 pounds. But obviously I was on steroids, so I was a little bit bulkier. But I went from being this, I was deadlifting 550 pounds for reps at 10. And I was like, I could do that again. I was a strong dude. By the time I was done, I had trouble picking up 40-pound sandbags. I was so sick and so weak. The minute I started getting my energy back, I felt vitality coming back. And I was like, there's hope at the end of this tunnel. There's something here. And then my joints started improving. My mood started improving. My anxiety started coming down. And I felt human for the first time in a long time.
Do you have a really specific moment in time? We started with like a victory, and then we kind of went back to bodybuilding and kind of pushing ourselves over. Is there a really specific moment, maybe a vacation, maybe just a simple Tuesday afternoon where you were like, "Wow, I'm actually awake and I'm not falling apart"? Is there a moment that seemed to reflect this transformation and this hope, and that more is possible?
In the way of my mental health, I think it was just a gradual improvement and a recognition that there's more to it. But the big one I can remember very distinctly, because since I was in my teens, I had some acne. I thought it was teenage acne, no big deal. Late teens, early 20s, I'm a paramedic, went to the doctor in the small town I was working. He's like, you just need to exfoliate. Nobody explained it was coming from inside. And there was
Mm.
a point, Kyle, my acne was up my neck, down my back, down so far on my arms. I had some on my wrists. I had acne everywhere because
Wow.
it was pushing toxins out of my lymphatic system. It was all over. And I remember one day, my wife looks at me, I had my shirt off, I'm walking in the bathroom. She's like, your back is clear. Like I had nothing. For the first time since I was a teenager, preteen, I had no acne on my body. And I was like, what? Like, that's incredible. I just thought it was always going to be part of me. That's what I was told. And for the first time, I was like, shit, like my skin is clear. I had better energy. My joints were better. ADHD was improved, but that skin for me was such a lingerer. And as a guy who's in bodybuilding and strength sports, I looked pretty good with a shirt off. Never wanted to
Hmm.
take it off, right? I was
Hmm.
embarrassed. I got pox and acne and all kinds of shit. And I had to like convince myself, like, no, it's okay. This is just me. And I had to body positivity my way through it, which was all bullshit. I had to fake it. But the day she looked at me, she's like, your skin looks good. That was a milestone. And I was like, this is good. I'm healing.
Did it happen in your home?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was in my bathroom. Again, not that big of a deal, but she walked past. I don't know if I was getting in or out of the shower, and she looked. She says, your skin looks good," and I'd never heard your skin looks good before.
Mm. Beautiful.
I felt beautiful. I was like, "Fuck yeah, look at me,
Yeah.
I'm so pretty."
Yeah. Yeah. We all deserve that. Um, I'm curious. One of the things that you mentioned earlier on is planning your own suicide,
Mm,
which I think is something that is more common than we'd like to admit. And it's certainly in the depth of my own experiences was something that was close to my mind as well.
mm.
Is there what was the moment where you were facing this, and where were you? What was going through your head at that time?
Mm. First of all, I want to acknowledge what it takes to actually bring that up. I know not everybody's comfortable with that, so I appreciate you saying that you've even dealt with that. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's not something anybody should have to deal with. We all have value and purpose and drive. And whether we're struggling with it on that level or it's the brain chemistry, like something is amiss. And there
Hmm.
is a way through that. For me, there was a few instances. I remember a couple of times where I made a noose. I was like, I just want to know what it felt like. I was like, could I go through with this? Am I man enough? Am I brave enough? Like, could I do this if I needed to? And I thought about it constantly, several days a week. There was times like sometimes a couple times a day I would think about it. Nothing in my life seemed to be going right. I was miserable. I was inflamed. I was sick. I was a paramedic. I thrived under chaos. I was like calm, cool, and collected when there's bodies and you name it. Like I did well in those situations. I went from that to having panic attacks on a regular basis. So something was wrong. And there were two particular instances outside of just kind of testing the waters. One where I was standing in Home Depot and I looked and I planned out and I said, okay, well, if I sealed off my car with garbage bags, I could use this tube. I had this tube in my hand. I was like, I could carbon monoxide myself. I would take that, put it in the door. I knew exactly what to do, how to seal it off. I was a paramedic. I know what to do. The only thing at that point that kept me from going through with it was the fear that I was in a parking garage in an apartment, that somebody would find me and I would be a vegetable rather than dying. That was the only thing that stopped me at that time. Another time I remember distinctively, I was standing in the drugstore and I worked out what's called the LD50. That's the lethal dose that kills 50% of people. And I knew if I take this much of this and this much of that, combined with this, combined with that, that would do the job. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And those are the most distinctive instances I remember very, very clearly planning it out and deciding if I was going to go through with it.
And what was something around these times that kept you? What was the glimmer of hope that set you to go through everything that you did on this path of discovery?
There were two sides of it. One was a fear of failure. But what if it didn't work? Where would I be left? Right? Would I need organ transplants? Would I be judged? Like if I survive, like what's my family going to think of me? Who's like, it was more of a fear of not being successful was one side of it. The other side was faith. I was raised in a Christian home, born and raised that way. And it was always kind of part of my belief. Suicide is wrong. So there's a fear now. It's like, what if I commit this horrible, heinous sin? Then what happens? But there was a small glimmer of hope that cracked through like all this darkness. It was just a little bit of light. And I believe that was very much a God thing. I believe there was just enough where he's like, no, dude, there's more for you here. And I get these flashes through my mind of the future, the people I can help. And it went beyond me at those moments. It wasn't so much about my life and am I comfortable right now? It was what can I do for somebody else? How can this story, this moment be used for something beneficial? Not to say, look at me, what I've done and overcome, but it's that some of the best purpose human beings can have is helping others. And I knew there was something like there's more to this life than what I'm dealing with. There's obvious a way through it. I've experienced those cracks. There's a glimmer of hope. There's a fear of screwing it up, but I might be able to help somebody else. And I was able to put myself aside, the selfishness of suicidality aside to say, who in this world would suffer if I disappeared? Not who would miss me, not what was me, but who would suffer or continue to be suffering if I went through with this? And those are some of the things that kept me going. Maybe not the shining story or the Olympic torch that we all maybe hope for in some of these stories. But it was fear and it was purpose.
In my work, and many of the people I've worked with, they want, or they think that they want a story of jumping out of a burning building and saving a baby, or punching an alligator in the mouth, swimming across the Nile.
Which is badass. I'll take one of those myself. I
Yeah.
do want that to be clear.
Yeah. And they think that that's what they would need to be a speaker or to move people. But in my decade of experience in this, it's the stories that somebody can come up to and say the exact same thing happened to me. And they're often, I dare to say, mundane. This isn't exactly a mundane moment by any means, but it's a quiet, yeah.
It's not glamorous.
Unglamorous moment. And a lot of the times people simply relate to these moments inappropriately, where we think that this is our weakest point. And when we can infuse purpose into them, it changes how we relate to ourselves as well as how people relate to us.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I hear that.
Would you like to hear your story?
I would love to. I've told it so many times. I've never had it told to me in a way that makes sense.
Let's see if this one works. Can I really do this? I see a rope in my hands tied into a noose. I'm constantly thinking about this because nothing in my life is going right. And I want to change. And this seems to be the only way out. Things are falling apart, and they have been for almost a decade now. My health is in the trash. I have to be constantly knowing anytime I go somewhere where the bathroom is and how I'm going to get there, what I'm eating, and why. I have this depression that's absolutely unshakable, and I don't even recognize the person that I see in the mirror anymore. And it just seems like it's my destiny. I've witnessed my mom go through surgery after surgery after surgery with the same problems as me. And I just wonder, if I keep going on, is that my fate too? More pain, more uncertainty. And for what? She's not doing better after all of these things. In fact, she's doing worse. My father's the same. And every doctor I've ever talked to told me there's nothing I can do about this. They give me, after 5 minutes of barely talking to me, barely looking at me, a prescription for more pills and tell me to come back in 6 months so they can tell me I'm getting worse and give me a higher dose. I'm a paramedic. And for many years, I've been saving lives, thriving in chaos. And now the simplest things set me off in panic attacks. And everything that I learned to save people's lives, I'm now plotting to end my own. I can remember being in Home Depot and looking at tubes and plastic bags and things that I could seal off my car and end my life. Going to the drugstore, knowing exactly which medications I could take that would end it. And I wonder to myself, what if this didn't work? What if I only turned myself into a vegetable? What if I failed and would be judged for this? And in these dark moments, when I didn't think there was anything left for me, there was just this tiny glimmer of hope and faith and a belief in God. And I remember listening in the quiet and in the stillness and in the darkness that had become my whole life. And I started to picture people. This wasn't just a problem for myself, but what could I help somebody else with? I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in these struggles. And how many other people, if I took my life, would go down this same road without any hope? And instead of ending it, I set out on what would become the greatest journey of my life. I wanted to figure out something different. I wanted to understand what was actually happening, the root cause of what was behind all of this, not just trying to cover up and erase symptom after symptom. I wanted to find a way to remove the problem that was causing this, to replenish my body in what it needed, to rebuild and repair what was happening in my health and rejuvenate my body so it wasn't addicted to anxiety, to depression, and to the things that now seemed normal, which certainly weren't. Friends, this would take many years and a lot of costly and painful mistakes. And slowly, I started to understand that what was happening in my gut was affecting me in so many ways that I didn't realize. The pain in my joints were linked to it. The anxiety, the craziness that I felt in my mind that I was so sure was just me being a broken, weak person was linked to what was happening there. the lack of energy that all of these things that I thought I was stuck with forever slowly started to clear up as I slowly started to find my own path. And I can remember years later, in a simple moment, getting out of the shower and brushing my teeth, and my wife walking by and saying, "Babe, your back is clear. I've never seen you like that." The acne that had once become something so normal, something part of me, something that covered me, something that I was afraid to even take my shirt off in the gym, had cleared up. And it was so amazing. In the same way that I digressed in my health and it just felt normal, over these last few years I was progressing. And I didn't realize how far I had come until that one simple moment. Nobody had ever told me that my skin looked good before. I'd never thought it. And I realized looking in that mirror for the first time that I had become that person that I needed to become. And I went on this journey not to help myself, but now I could help so many other people with the same problem, affected by anxiety, depression, digestive issues, pain, these things that aren't normal, but have become so everyday for so many people. And this is what I'm here to tell you about. There is a path that is hopeful, that is lasting. And even if your doctor hasn't told you about this yet, this is available to you. And that's what I'm here to teach you today.
Man, that's heavy, isn't it? I think when we live in our own story, it's a really bizarre experience being told your own story. When we live in it, it's not that exciting. Been there, done that, kind of desensitized to it. But to hear it back in that way, it revitalizes everything, every detail for somebody else's benefit. You know, I've told my story a couple of times on podcast. I've been on 200 podcasts, and I'll tell bits and pieces of the story. Well, it's not that exciting, but it can be, and it really can shift somebody else. And I'm just so grateful that we're actually here doing this right now, because storytelling is a powerful, powerful thing, and you have a gift that is something else.
Well, thank you so much. And because of people like you, I've been able to channel this gift and make an impact in the world. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without going down this same journey that you've been illustrating here with us today. It's very important. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to serve and help you on this path. Josh, do you have any closing thoughts for us today? And where can we go to learn more about you?
My normal closing thoughts in any other show are going to be a lot different. But there's a crossover here. Let me tell you this. Never accept your diagnosis lying down, because no matter what you've been told about the state or condition of your health, it's a temporary set of being. It's very temporary. Whether it's moods, emotions, anxiety, depression, whatever it is, right down to the bowel diseases where I specialize, it's all temporary. And once you understand that, there's so much more power for yourself, for your future, for your kids, for your life, wherever you're at. And follow this template. Learn your story, because you can't really fix something until you understand it. You have to understand where it comes from. And once you get to those deep, deep, deep roots that sort of have to be shown to you in a mirror sometimes, just like this, only then can you unlock that next level. So I'm really grateful to be here. I think it was just an incredible experience. Thank you.
Josh Dech, thank you so much for joining us today on the Story Engine podcast.
Been a pleasure to be here, man.